U.S. President Donald Trump will appear in a Washington-D.C. court on Thursday after being federally indicted on 4 counts related to efforts to overturn the result of the 2020 presidential election. Trump lost to President Joe Biden in that contest, but riled up his supporters with mistruths about the election process, culminating in the attack on Congress in January 2021 and behind-the-scenes efforts to undermine the integrity of the poll. This is the second time Special Counsel Jack Smith has indicted the Republican frontrunner for president in 2024 after returning a grand jury indictment in June related to Trump's alleged mishandling of a highly classified government material.
An indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump with conspiring to defraud the United States, conspiring to disenfranchise voters, and conspiring and attempting to obstruct an official proceeding. The indictment was issued by a grand jury of citizens here in the District of Columbia, and it sets forth the crimes charged in detail. I encourage everyone to read it in full. The attack on our nation's capital on January 6, 2021, was an unprecedented assault on the seat of American democracy. As described in the indictment, it was fueled by lies. Lies by the defendant targeted at obstructing a bedrock function of the U.S. government, the nation's process of collecting, counting, and certifying the results of the presidential election.
All right, for more now, we are joined by SABC News Correspondent in New York, Sherwin Bryce-Pease. Sherwin, thank you so much for your time. Now, of all the indictments, this has been the one that many people have long been waiting for. Just given the false rhetoric around the 2020 election that led to those chaotic scenes that we saw on January 6, 2021, the evidence that was led by the January 6 committee in Congress, that in itself was quite damning. And now this detailed 45-page indictment, what in essence does it explain in terms of the charges Trump must yet again answer to?
In essence, Unati, the details contained in this indictment speak to what has been in the public record, right? I think there's nothing more visual than the attack of Congress on Congress that we all witnessed during the certification process of the 2020 election results, right? That was the culmination of what this indictment is referring to. It talks about 4 counts. 1 count of conspiracy to defraud the United States, applying to Trump's repeated and widespread efforts to spread false claims about the election in 2020. 1 count of conspiracy to obstruct the official proceeding of Congress that certified the results, and an attempt to do so was the 3rd count. And then 1 count of conspiracy against the rights of citizens, essentially to have their votes correctly reflected. And then it really details, the behind-the-scenes efforts deployed by Trump and his allies, among them his lawyer Rudy Giuliani, to pressure lawmakers both in states and in Congress to delay the certification of the results, to send fake electors to Congress. You'll understand that complex notion of the Electoral College that elects a president in the United States. Essentially, if one candidate wins the popular vote in a state, that the electors up for grabs in that state then go to the candidate that won the state, and then they help to certify the election result in their favor. There was an effort by Trump to send fake electors to the vice president, then Vice President Mike Pence, who was as president of the Senate, overseeing the certification process in Congress on January 6, 2021, and pressuring the vice president to defy the Constitution, accept the fake electors sent by states like Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin, that essentially sent fake electors and not the electors that Joe Biden won. And that is basically what this 45-page indictment is laying on. But the crux of the matter here, Unati, is that this indictment tells us what this charge is not about. This is not about Donald Trump's ability to speak freely. This is not about Donald Trump's ability to even lie about what might or might not have happened in the election. In the opening statement, it says, The defendant had a right, like every American, to speak publicly about the election and even to claim falsely that there had been outcome determinative fraud during the election that he had won. He also is entitled to formally challenge the results of the election. So it lays out what Donald Trump's rights are. What you are hearing quickly from the Donald Trump defense is that this is essentially going to be a case built on the First Amendment, Donald Trump's right to free speech, his right to political speech. The indictment is making clear from the onset that this is not what they're going to be pursuing. They will be pursuing the efforts behind the scenes to pressure electors, to pressure members of Congress, to pressure the Justice Department to subvert the outcome of the election, which Joe Biden, and which we've all since 2020 been reporting on, that Joe Biden won. Unati.
Interesting. Now, Trump and his Republican allies have been quick to label this as part of a democratic effort to weaponize the Justice Department, going as far as to compare his legal jeopardy to times in Nazi Germany of the Soviet Union. How are they framing this, Sherwin?
Yeah, you've seen the likes of Republican Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, and many other Republican lawmakers that are in the Donald Trump camp coming out saying that this is about a weaponization of the Justice Department to target conservatives, to target Donald Trump, in essence because he is currently the front runner on the Republican side, leading his closest rival, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, by some 30 points in the latest New York Times Siena poll that came out this week. So that is their argument, that this is election interference. A statement from the Trump campaign saying that this latest corrupt chapter in the continued pathetic attempt by the Biden crime family and their weaponized Department of Justice to interfere with the 2024 presidential election, calling himself the undisputed frontrunner. Of course, he's only the undisputed frontrunner on the Republican side. He questions why they wanted to wait 2.5 years before these charges were brought. I think that is a fair question that many people, both on either side of this debate, have. And he talks about the lawlessness of these persecutions, reminiscent of Nazi Germany in the 1930s, the former Soviet Union, and other dictatorial regimes. President Trump has always followed the law and the Constitution with advice from many highly accomplished lawyers. Well, I must tell you that some of these accomplished lawyers, the likes of Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, Sidney Powell, among the 6 co-conspirators named in this indictment, or not named in this indictment, but certainly reporting that we have seen pointing to them, really question the veracity of the Trump claim that these are accomplished lawyers, because it seems in terms of this indictment that they gave the former president very poor legal advice.
Now, this, of course, his second federal indictment, his third indictment overall so far, with more indictments likely to drop in the days and weeks ahead, for the former president, or so we're told. All this while an election is looming next year. As we wrap our conversation, Sherwin, just lay it all for us.
They call it dangerous times in the United States, right? You have the two sides pitted against each other and, Donald Trump with a bully pulpit here, riling up his supporters, claiming that this is election interference and having a base of MAGA Republicans that believe every word he says. On the other side, you have a Justice Department through the Special Counsel that is pursuing both this indictment as it relates to interfering in the 2020 election, but also the charges as it related to his mishandling and willful retention of highly classified government materials. There, of course, is the hush money payment fraud charges that he faces in state court. This is a state indictment led by the DA in Manhattan, Alvin Bragg. And then there are pending charges, Unati, as we understand it, out of the state of Georgia. You'll remember that infamous call that Donald Trump made to the Secretary of State in the state of Georgia, where he talked about finding so many votes, basically the votes that he required to defeat Joe Biden in what was essentially a Republican-leaning state. But of course, Joe Biden turning that around, winning the state of Georgia, Trump then influencing local electoral officials to find him the votes. All this leading to a building legal jeopardy that Donald Trump will have to answer to. We don't know the timing of when these court cases will be. There is, of course, an election in 2024. There are primaries that Donald Trump is participating in that will lead up to November 2024. So there's so much going on here, both politically and legally. And as journalists, we'll be standing upright and watching it all.
Absolutely. Sherwin, thank you so much for that comprehensive update. Of course, Sherwin Bryce-Pease is coming to us live from New York there, just ahead of Donald Trump appearing in court tomorrow.